Uncle Dan.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Mark has a surprise for us.
Yeah, you and I, Uncle Doug, do not know what's coming.
No, I rarely do.
We're oblivious people.
That's right.
But we're gonna dive in. We're gonna get back to as the Utahns say, our roots.
Our roots
here, and go for a how-to
with a tall glass of milk,
milk,
and a pillow.
Yeah.
Well, the best way to go through life is in a constant state of surprise, I find.
And lactose overload.
Yes, exactly.
So, yeah, there's been fellas.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to kind of spring this how-to on you because I think what I want to do is get some just honest reactions and thoughts and spark a discussion because this how-to, like many of our how-tos, like maybe how to drink, is not here's how you do a thing. It's here's how to begin to think about a thing.
Yeah.
How to begin to think about how you might go about doing a thing.
And we're going to begin to think about a thing.
Yeah, and I think this one is going to have a lot of opinions will vary.
Okay.
So I'm
even opinions within the room.
Oh, I definitely think so.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm going to do a little preamble to this how-to before I kind of say what it is.
Okay.
But I think it's a really important one in recent events out certainly in our part of the world and even in our own lives, Dan, have got me thinking about this a lot.
Okay.
So let me jump in here. So earlier this year, there was an explosive and very strange recording that was posted on John DeLynne's Mormon Stories podcast and on a news site called Mormon Leaks.
Okay.
Right, which is the WikiLeaks of the Mormon world. So without a Julian Assange, hopefully. But it was made by a woman named McKenna Denson, and it was her clandestine conversation with the former head of the Mormon Missionary Training Center in Provo, Utah.
Yeah, this made pretty big splash, like nationally.
Pretty big splash. And it was a guy named Joseph L. Bishop, and of course the MTC is a sacred institution in Mormonism.
Right.
Uncle Doug passed through it.
I did.
Who knows? Maybe this guy was the head of it.
Like a corn kernel, he passed through it.
And they come out the other end.
That's right.
Yellow and undigested, and knowing not a goddamn thing.
Covered with shit.
Except conversational Spanish. So this guy is called Joseph L. Bishop. I don't know. Was he there when you were there, Doug?
I can't. Oh God, I don't remember.
Anyway,
do you know his tenure?
I could look it up, but I don't.
Let's not bother.
So in this tape, McKenna Denson eventually confronts Bishop about the sexual assault and rape she suffered there in the 80s from him in a specifically prepared basement room under his office that had a bed and a TV VCR with pornographic movies.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
It's crazy. He had a little sex dungeon.
Yes.
This is a guy who's pretty high up in the church. I find his name confusing because he wasn't a bishop.
Right.
His name was Bishop. He wasn't a bishop, but he was considered, like, that position is a position of some reverence.
Very much so.
Yeah, it's that's a career-making position in the Mormon church.
Yeah, and to be fair, it wasn't a sex dungeon so much as a sex dormitory.
It's a sex dorm. My favorite
Which,
movie.
by the way, that's a great movie. Rent it at your leisure.
So what's amazing is he pretty much cops to all of it. Like once she gets around to confronting him,
right?
He
doesn't cop to her specifically.
He cops to a lot of shit.
Yeah, he says, you were the one terrible. I used to do that. Oh, did I do that to you? I don't remember.
He's like, you were the one with something breasts, and she's like, no, I'm as flat as a boy. Always have. So he basically rambles out confessions to several sexual assaults.
Right. Wow. Yeah, he does that. He's like, were you the redhead who had the mole on her left? No? Okay, well.
Just to be clear, that is not a good legal strategy.
Yeah, that's right. That's the worst way to respond to this.
So, yeah, he just keeps admitting to things. And again, this was totally legal because Utah is a one-party recording state.
Right.
And I'll put a link to the Mormon Stories podcast where this recording is on. If you have the time and the interest, it is one of the weirdest, most fascinating things I've ever heard on tape because
it's also horrifying.
It's horrifying, but
and you should go into it with a sort of blanket trigger warning.
The fact that he doesn't know this is coming, and then he completely cops to it, is one of the strangest things I've ever heard.
Yeah.
So after it was made public, the Mormon Church did what any loving, tender-hearted disciple of Christ would do. They sicked their high-powered law firm on her and tried to discredit and slander her in every conceivable way.
Right, exactly.
Despite her having a straight-up admission on tape. So,
the problem isn't him, obviously. The problem is her.
Right.
Yeah.
She's a Jezebel.
Did you know that she's not even a very good Mormon?
Yeah, she's divorced. Her marriage fell apart. So
we can't believe anything he said on a tape.
yeah.
I love that when the perpetrators of abuse use the symptoms of abuse in follow-on life to discredit the people they've abused.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, they haven't been able to hold a marriage together. How could I have sexually assaulted her?
They struggle in relationships.
Right.
How can we trust these
They
people?
don't trust authority figures.
How can we trust the recordings made by these people?
I'm sure the moment that tape went live, there was a massive transfer from the Catholic Church to the Mormon Church. Here's what you do, guys. So anyway, the statute for criminal charge has long since expired. Official Mormondom has decided to treat her like a cockroach.
Yeah.
And so just about a week ago or so, McKenna Denson, with the help of a puckish troublemaker called New Name Noah, decided to take some action. Yeah, who we know. So they went to Joseph L. Bishop's, and of course he's a Mormon authority, so he must have a middle initial.
Right.
They went to his neighborhood church in Arizona on the one Sunday a month called Fast and Testimony.
I'm sorry, just he is still in his position of authority?
No. But
Okay.
because
He's just a hapless old man now.
Okay.
when you hit a certain rank, your middle initial is assumed.
Right.
Exactly.
And these people went to a different state. They traveled. She and her and some compatriots traveled to a church in a different state
On what's called Fast and Testimony meeting.
which is Mormon open mic.
Open mic day. So back in the day, we passed mics around, but now you walk up to the pulpit in front of the whole room, and anybody, and visitors are welcome under very tightly controlled circumstances. And usually you can go up and bear your testimony about the truth of the gospel or tell a faith-affirming story about a miracle with 3 eternal Mayan peasants. So while New Name Noah was secretly taping, and somebody else, I think.
There were 3 people.
2 or
at
3,
least
yeah.
three.
Because somebody sees Mike Norton's camera.
Yeah.
Anyway, McKenna Denson got up and spoke, and we'll put a link to this video in the show notes. It is very, very interesting. She basically talked about you are protecting a rapist who's in this ward, who's in this church.
Yeah.
Right.
Because she hasn't been able to get any kind of relief or even a dialogue with the church about what happened. So that's that story. Another time, this very brave child used her 3 minutes at the mic to come out as gay at Fast and Testimony meeting in front of her entire church community. The kid is 12 or was 12.
Yeah. Which, for our listeners, if she had gotten up there and cut a puppy into pieces, it would have been less shocking to that congregation.
Yeah, you have to understand the decorum.
Yeah.
The tedium and decorum of a Mormon church service is so impenetrable.
Yeah.
that if you were to be present for any of these things happen, I'm surprised the pews survived with the amount of butt puckering that happened.
Yeah.
In any of these events.
They didn't clench the pews into sawdust.
Right.
But how fucking metal is this kid, right?
Yeah.
She's 12. And again, Dan, the unwritten rules around every moment in Mormonism are
Right.
so strict. But, 12-year-old, I was a 12-year-old gay kid, and I was not remotely in the galaxy where there was enough courage for me to muster to have done a thing like that. So,
Right.
They cut her off, of course.
Which they do.
And refusing to recognize the incredible courage of this child to do what
Absolutely.
she did. So kudos to her.
Just a little point of order. There's the microphone has a turn-off switch next to the bishop.
Yeah, the bishop in his chair.
In his chair.
Can
Like
just flip a
Captain
switch.
Kirk
Yeah.
can turn off the microphone.
And in the case of McKenna Denson, there's always a couple of men who may decide to put their hands on her without permission.
Yeah.
Which
It is interesting. Mormon men are so taught that their authority is real.
yeah.
That it wouldn't. What's funny is that we now are in a time when a man just manhandling, and what an appropriate phrase, a woman is not okay. But these guys, that wouldn't even occur to them not to grab a woman.
And the fact that she was talking about non-consensual contact.
Right.
They just get up and go ahead and grab her.
Yeah.
Like, you watch the tape, you will.
Yeah.
And she's like, you are assaulting me.
Yeah. They grabbed her like an unruly drunk at a bar.
Right. And by any modern legal standard, I would agree that they were physically assaulting her.
Yeah.
They didn't beat her up,
No.
but they grabbed her. So So other people have used this once monthly open mic event to bring up things like Mormons don't want to discuss coming out as a kid, sexual assault. A burning topic these days is the practice of face-to-face interviews between adult Mormon lay clergy and teen and preteen kids in worthiness interviews that often involve sexually explicit interrogations. What can be boiled down to as masturbation shaming.
Right.
Also, Mormon bishops are chosen out of the community to serve for a few years and have zero training in counseling, pediatrics, et cetera, et cetera. It's just old creepers asking 12-year-old children what they fantasize about. So,
being required to ask children what they're fantasized about.
right, but there's no limit on what they can ask, really.
Right, but there are explicit rules about you have to ask.
Yeah, you
these
can't
questions.
demur from asking about masturbation.
No.
Right. So, adult survivors of this practice have described lives of crippling shame, suicide attempt, self-hatred, et cetera, et cetera.
Blah, blah, blah.
So,
Yada,
Same
yada,
old,
yada.
same old, same old.
right. And a couple of those guys have stood up in front of, and again, they've been taped standing up in fast and testimony
Yeah.
meeting and using that microphone in that audience to make a statement.
Right.
So another way this particular topic is being challenged, the child interviews, is by a guy called Sam Young, who's an active Mormon and a former bishop himself, who's conducted a hunger strike outside of Mormon headquarters in Salt Lake City, challenging the church leadership to come meet with him about ending this dangerous and useless practice. Naturally, they've refused and have instead summoned him to a hearing for excommunication. So that's nice.
Yeah, yeah. It's, basically, the biggest sin you can commit as a Mormon and as a member of almost any religion is to challenge the authority of the people who are in charge of that religion.
Yeah, it's far worse than child rape or abuse.
Talking to a kid about their masturbation is nothing.
Right.
But confronting that practice is a big deal.
As we have discussed in graphic detail on this show, on our past shows, shooting the messenger is very much a Mormon article of faith. So let's not. Lastly, let's revisit the troublemaker I mentioned earlier, new name Noah,
who you doxed earlier.
Well, he's revealed himself.
Yes, he has.
Yeah, he has revealed himself as Mike Norton, a former Mormon himself. Mike became disillusioned with Mormonism for a lot of reasons. But as he once explained to Uncle Doug and I, it really hit when he sat down with several official versions of the never-changing, totally perfect, and inerrant Word of God, the Book of Mormon, and was staggered by the major differences between the versions.
Right.
So, and Mike, if you're listening, you may correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like some of the timing when you started doing this might have had something to do with Mitt Romney's run for the presidency. But Mike made it his mission to puncture the sanctimonious Mormon bubble of secrecy that are the sacred Mormon temple rituals.
Right.
Mike's a pretty relentless character. He figured out the gaping
And
weaknesses.
he's got balls of brass, I gotta say.
He's quite a character. And he figured out the gaping weaknesses in the Mormon temple security, faked up an ID or two with a ruler and a pencil, and cleverly hiding his iPhone in a necktie or a book, he managed to film...
Or an oxygen tank.
Yeah.
Wait, let's not reveal all of his secrets.
Right. But anyway, he just did a very low-tech approach to this thing and just walked right into the temple. He's pretty much filmed all of the rituals, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, they're all, and he's put them all onto YouTube. So if you're interested in boring yourself to tears, you can actually see the entirety of the Mormon temple rituals.
Prepare to be disappointed.
Although there are these moments of like cuckoo bananas,
Right.
like sort of built into it.
Yes.
So you have to wade through 70 minutes of like, oh my God, stop.
It's
to get to the 1 minute of, oh my God, what?
It's 80% banality, and then it's like 20% super weirdness that is mostly a bunch of grown people dressed as comedic bakers in a children's television show. doing
I almost did a spit take.
doing frontier Tai Chi. So,
oh my God.
Pele ale to that.
Oh, shit.
that's kind of Mike's Black Ops stuff. And as Dan says, if you're interested, just go to YouTube, type in new name Noah. There must be I don't know how many videos he's got up by now.
Oh, that got me.
And what's hilarious is the worst thing they can do is charge him with misdemeanor trespassing.
Right.
But he does drive Mormondom up a rammy-umptum for sure. So I bring up all these different people because these are several people who have been wronged or have a legitimate beef with the Mormon Church, Each has used different methods to challenge or confront this hugely powerful, monolithic institution in its own space, kind of a judo using its own kind of methodology against it. So that is going to lead into what I think is a larger discussion. And I know people have been doing this kind of thing in the Jehovah's Witness universe. I know they've been doing it in against some in Catholicism, against other institutions that refuse to be held to account for their crimes. So the how-to I want to delve into today, and I think this is where opinions may vary, is how to, when to, if to confront
Your church.
your church.
Wow.
How to, when is it appropriate? Is it appropriate? And I think what McKenna, in my opinion, what McKenna Denson did is 100% appropriate.
It's tricky.
Yeah.
This whole thing is it's a quagmire, and I think that a propriety may need some definition, because what we're talking about is, I don't know. I think we need to get to what is your goal.
Yes, and this is why
If I may ask the Page question.
specifically why I didn't want Page here, because he would just say, "What's your goal? Be nice. Don't." Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Then I love Page.
I don't know that he would say be nice.
Right. But here's where I'm coming from with this is we have grown up in this monoculture of Mormonism and still kind of contend with its overly large presence in our lives all the time,
Right.
in the public sphere. My thinking about it is religion in America, especially Christianity, which is very persecuted, we all know that, does not recognize that any of the rest of us have safe space.
Right.
It doesn't it sees my bedroom as a gay man as their political territory.
Right.
It sees our schools as absolutely their political territory.
It sees every woman's uterus.
Right.
Yeah.
It sees the physical body of every girl and woman as their political territory. I don't know why they get a place where we don't get to go.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think that that there's nothing sacred about the sacred, in that I don't think they'll claim that they're off limits in terms of being
Challenged.
because you're challenging their most deeply held sacred beliefs.
It's
and how-
deeply precious.
and to some extent, like I think that there are reasons to challenge them that are valid and reasons that are less valid.
Of course.
And some people want to go after them for something that's just stupid, and it's like, well, I don't even know what you're doing.
Right.
She, Denson,
Yeah.
clearly, not only, I mean, she's not seeking, a settlement from the church for herself. I think she knows that. I think the ship has sailed. Oh, actually, no, she's got a lawsuit in place.
Yeah.
I'm wrong. She has a lawsuit that's not about. She can't sue the guy because the statute of limitations is there, but
It's the criminal statute has
Right.
He can't be tried in a criminal.
But civilly, she can sue the institution
she's suing
or
the
something.
church
Yeah.
because the church put him forward as a safe representative of them, and that's fair. And I think also it came out, and I can't verify this, but it came out that maybe she's part of a group that's trying to shoot a documentary about abuses within the church. And
Fair game, I think.
And this is publicity for her.
Yeah.
So I mean, all of that says to me, yeah, get in there but it is also, she was technically probably trespassing, maybe, or could
Well,
be said to be.
I would say in the broadest possible
Visitors
strokes.
are welcome. It says so.
It
on
says
the,
so
that's a
on the
good
buildings.
point. That's a good point.
In the broadest possible strokes, this is a free country. Free speech is as close to a religious right. You know what I mean,
Right.
for our country. You have every right to confront people. You have every right, if you're willing to suffer the consequences. I don't think a church service is any more protected or safe or sacred than a city council meeting, than a Senate hearing, than a campaign event. I mean, I think
If a church service is open to the public,
absolutely, well, of course, yeah.
because
I mean, I think-
a church could just say, you know what, this is all of us. We're not letting
that's
other people
again.
in,
That's
but-
saying that they get to make a rule that they're protected when they decide they're protected, and they've decided that none of the rest of us have protection. You know what I mean?
they can make a rule about their building. You can't come into my building.
Well, leaving hypocrisy aside for a second, I just think that it bears mentioning that this is a free country, and if you want to go into a church service, or you want to confront someone on the street, or you're willing to suffer the consequences of a misdemeanor trespassing charge, go. You can go do that thing just like Code Pink does at Senate hearings. And you know what I mean? Like, I think that to separate those things,
a little civil disobedience.
Civil disobedience. So, but in the case of this woman, and then we'll get into this, but I think she was sexually assaulted.
Yeah. She was raped.
Like, she has a grievance.
Yeah.
If I was not sexually assaulted, I just had a shitty 22 years of Mormonism.
Right.
I don't feel compelled to go in to one of their testimony meetings because I don't feel like I have a grievance that needs to be addressed. I can try and put myself in her shoes and be like, you're going to hear me, you sons of bitches. You're going to hear me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are a lot of people, and apparently this has been blowing up on ex-Mormon Reddit pages, and we need to make this about more than just a Mormonism, but
we're just using this as an entry point into the conversation.
Exactly. But there are a lot of people who have been filming themselves going up, because Mormonism has that unique thing where every month they have that open mic night, and people go up and you get the mic, and people have been going up and saying, you know what, I found out a bunch of disturbing things about this church. I feel lied to, and I feel like this isn't, and so even if they don't have they weren't assaulted, they weren't raped, they weren't treated. You may not have even been maltreated,
personally afflicted by.
Right.
Right.
There are people who are doing this just to say, I feel lied to, or I feel like this church. I now know fairly conclusively that this church isn't true.
Yeah.
And I think that. I guess to me, there is a question of what is your goal.
I agree with that.
Absolutely. What is the goal?
Because you need to look out for your own sanctity of mind, and you need to treat yourself well. And so if your goal is to get them, and you get trapped in, I think the aggressive against your former church thing is a trap for your own psyche, or is dangerous for your own psyche.
I think yes and no.
You can get into a pattern where you're not looking out. You're more obsessed with getting them than you are with taking care of you.
Well, right, but I think it's not. I think that oversimplifies that. Getting them it's not necessarily revenge. I think I'm attributing some motivations to McKenna Denson. And I certainly see what's happening with Sam Young, who's having the hunger strike.
Yeah.
He's trying to prevent further harm.
Right.
And I think part of her motivation may be doing the same thing.
Probably.
Yeah.
And absolutely. I think that's an incredibly appropriate. There's that open mic.
Yeah.
There's the sign that says visitors welcome.
Yeah.
And if you don't have, if you're a member of a church that doesn't have an open mic, standing outside that church with a sign, or just, whatever it is you feel like your protest is, like however it ends up looking, that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and I think, we've talked about this on the show many times, but leaving religion is an intensely personal journey.
Yes.
And it's different for everybody. My own, journey was, part of it was when I realized how silly all of these beliefs were. I was embarrassed that I had believed them. And I didn't want to be around Mormons. I didn't. So, but other people feel like they need to have a parting shot, or they need to be heard, or confront the people that have lied to them or mistreated them. I think whatever that part of your journey is for you, if you need to stand up to the person face to face, then I think you should.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. And I want to be clear about that. I think that for some people that could be a very important thing for them. I don't think you can expect good results.
I don't think you can. I agree. I don't think you can, but I think oftentimes it's like coming out of the closet. It's declaring yourself.
Right.
I think oftentimes it is incredibly important that you have that stepping stone of saying, this community that I was part of, that I gave so much to, that maybe I got something from, but I gave so much to, I'm now in this space where I don't believe it's true, or I have been hurt, or I am, you person have caused me harm. That if you don't have that confrontation, or at least speaking your truth, that may be something that you just carry too long and too unhealthily.
Yeah, and I think what I'm getting at is do it if you want to do that. If if it feels important to you to do that, just remember that you're doing it for you.
Right.
You're not doing it to change them, because changing them,
I agree.
because you're not going to.
No, and
or
I think
if you
your point
do,
is-
or you might, but but this needs to be about you doing it for you.
Your point is very valid. You're not going to change anyone. It's unlikely that, especially when you confront someone in their environment, that you're going to change their minds. I mean, you could argue that maybe you lay some doubt in other people's minds, but it's unlikely you'll have a good outcome. You will burn some bridges.
Yeah.
You will probably sour some relationships.
And you have to consider that.
You have to consider that.
Yeah.
If you're willing for those bridges to burn, then do your thing.
Yeah.
But
And
remember, they're not going to be there anymore.
right. Well, and I'm just saying, like, and there will be an emotional cost to doing it,
And a social cost.
to this confrontation.
Yep.
So don't go in blindly to that.
Think it through.
Thinking that you're going to walk out of there just feeling nothing but empowerment.
Right.
Because there's going to be this negative side to it.
It will
as
be
well.
complicated.
It will be complicated, and it will be messy, and somebody will say something hurtful, and there's going to be a lot of shit that's going to go down.
There's confronting directly the person who may have been that you see as symbolizing all the harm that was done to you,
Right.
or the person that literally caused you harm.
Right.
A guy got up in another fast and testimony meeting and said, laid out his Mormon bona fides, and then began to talk about things, sorry, non-Mormon listeners, like the Book of Abraham, and where the doubts began to kind of come into him. He wasn't a personal victim of an event.
Right.
But he wanted to express, as you were saying earlier, some of the doubts. Now, he was told to leave.
Right.
But I think that may be, for a lot of people sitting in that room, that may be the first time they heard any of that stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
And Mormons, of course, are taught to be missionaries all their lives. Maybe he was just saying, now I feel like I have something else to share with you.
Right.
I'm not saying that's wrong, but I think that's where this bubble that allows this thing to be such an institution that causes harm without caring about it.
Yeah.
It's okay to pierce that. I think it's okay to pierce that bubble.
I think so too. I just think but the thing that is most important to me in all of this is the individual's personal happiness and health.
Yeah, is this going to help you get closer to that goal?
Because look, if your goal is to drop a poison pill in the well and try and make sure and try and explode religion, guess what?
Well, it's not going to happen.
You're not going to do it. So what you need to do is ask yourself, what helps you?
Yeah.
What's good for you? What and be real with yourself about like what consequences may happen.
Right.
And there's many other forms of confrontation, obviously.
Yeah, that's true.
You could do everything from standing up and putting a hood over your head in sacrament meeting. I don't know why I said a hood.
That's weird.
It is weird. It just occurred to me. Or you can write a letter. You can phone someone up and tell them this thing you want to tell them. You can go visit them. There's a million ways you can express that confrontation.
So that brings me to a point that to the personal, where Dan and I both in the recent months have attended funerals for young people that should not have died.
Right.
And I will be very, very careful in the details I give so I don't expose anybody for any reason. But you attended a Mormon one. Yeah. Mormon funerals are very classic, especially of young people, especially suicides. Classic for painting a picture of a person that you don't recognize.
Yeah.
Not honoring the person that died
or even not even, I mean, the classic Mormon thing is barely mention the person.
Yeah.
And just
talk about Jesus and the church.
Talk about the church the whole time.
So I attended a non-Mormon Christian service of someone who died very, very terribly. It was not a suicide. And the person conducting the service took some incredibly egregious liberties, as far as I'm concerned, with claiming to know things about the last moments of this person's life that were, of course, impossible to claim, and using it to sell Jesus at the end of it.
Right.
So, of course, the last thing I was going to do was stand up at a funeral and say, "You stop, mister."
Right.
I think fucked up.
We can make the editorial position of this podcast: don't interrupt a funeral for your confrontation.
Right. It wasn't my. I knew I was going to a Christian service.
I might do that at Mark's funeral, but that's my business.
I mean, and maybe I should amend that.
The suicide note says no funeral.
I should amend that to say that, like, if things are so out of hand,
Leave.
well, I mean, like for instance, recently during Aretha Franklin's funeral,
Yes.
there was one preacher who was saying things like Black lives don't matter as long as black people are killing each other, and none other than Stevie Wonder himself yelled out Black Lives Matter. Like he
good for him.
interrupted a funeral because something was going so egregiously awry, and Aretha Franklin's family was horrified by this eulogist.
Is that the eulogist that was kind of groping Ariana Grande?
Nope,
or is
different guy. Lots of fun shit happened at that funeral.
Wow.
But like, yeah, you
Yes,
can interrupt a funeral if something horribly egregious.
Well, or
is
your
happening.
Stevie Wonder.
or your Stevie
Or your
Wonder.
Stevie fucking Wonder. So let me tell you, I was pretty close at this funeral, even though most of the people there had no idea who I was. But I was in agony. I was very, very, very sad and hurt, and this was a person I was close to.
Yeah.
And to see what was the liberties that were taken, it was so fucking egregious that I didn't sleep for like 3 nights after that. So I decided, okay, I got to write this guy an email.
Yeah.
So the way I challenged what was going on there was I had a one-on-one conversation, email exchange with this person. I was pretty strident in my tone. I tried to be the lowest level of anger I could be, but I was still in a very grieving space. And so I just laid out what I thought, where I thought a otherwise beautiful service went completely off the rails into a high pressure sales event.
Yeah.
And so we had a back and forth. I'm not sure what will come of it. Here's what I would say my goal is from that. It was speaking my truth.
Yeah.
That I'm not willing to put up with that shit, which was very abusive, taking advantage of a bunch of grieving people stuck in a space who were obviously, for propriety's reasons, unable to say anything.
Right.
And that if nothing else, the next time he gets up to do something like that, he'll hesitate.
Right.
You might think twice. Yeah.
He might think twice. And that was the goal, is just push back, because I think that was abusive. I think it was bullying. And I think it was taking advantage of the death of a very beloved person to do something that was very crass.
Yeah.
And very grotesque. So in my little way, I didn't do it publicly. This is the most public I've been about it. Nobody knows who I'm talking about. In my little way, I pushed back. And I think that people should fucking hear that.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, and I think that especially in that, and frankly, if he had been a dick about it, maybe we would have made it public. You know what I mean?
He did all the things Christians do. Is he immediately became the victim? He ran to the fainting couch. He did all that stuff.
Yeah,
but he wasn't really a dick about it.
yeah, and I read some of that exchange. You sent it to me, and I thought it was. I thought he did actually like take some of it to heart, and it sounded sounded like he was actually like he considered what you had to say.
But, yeah, I do
Which is
think
kind
it
of
was,
a best case scenario.
Yeah,
Right.
I do think, to your point, Uncle Mark, is that he had not had a criticism in that sphere probably his entire life.
Yeah.
Because
he's
you
an
could
older
tell
guy.
he was kind of shocked
He's an
that
older
he
guy.
that he had hurt somebody.
Yeah, and he got a bad Yelp review, and I don't think he was ready for that.
And I think so. I think that maybe that's a critical point too. Is that some of these spaces have been so sanctified socially
And
in
off
our,
limits.
in
I
our
agree.
world,
Yeah.
that they've never even heard that they could possibly be doing something
yeah.
wrong. So it may be that like badass confrontation isn't what's needed. Just a gentle nudge could be shocking to them.
Right.
Just saying to them, that actually hurt me, right? You
Right.
know that, don't you? And they may not.
Right.
That's which is one of the sort of shocking things about all of
I
this.
will give him credit that I don't think he's a bad person at all.
Right.
I think he went there with nothing but good intentions and love in his heart, but in the vernacular of the Christianity that he's been part of for all his life, he couldn't imagine
Right.
that deciding to sell Jesus like a set of steak knives or a timeshare was
At a funeral.
right.
was anything but glorious.
Right.
Right.
And
And who could object to it?
Well,
Right.
and that's the thing is in our civic life, we are encouraged to call your senator, call your representative, make your voice heard. And I don't think that any religious institution or person deserves any more protection or sanctuary than we give to our political world.
Right.
So if I think you have every right to make your voice heard. They don't deserve peace if peace is not what they deserve, right? I mean,
And they only deserve, when I say safe space, everything I'm talking about right now, I think is the only method is total nonviolence.
of course.
Right. Not to cause physical harm or property damage or anything like that. It is simply to use the brains God gave us to challenge them in a space that they're not willing to give us. And let me just super fine point. I just want to make a little correction. I wasn't mad because it was a Christian service or he was talking about Jesus. Right. I was mad that he used the moment of an incredibly violent death as the vehicle through which to sell that. That's what was disturbing. I was ready to sing Christian songs. I was ready to bow my head in prayer. I'm an atheist, and I knew what I was going into. I thought. So I'm not saying that going to a religious funeral or service is in and of itself an insult to you.
Right.
You're going there to honor somebody, to remember somebody, to show love and support for a community or a family.
And you said outside of that moment, it was a pretty service. It was,
it was beautiful. I mean, it was, his family was amazing, and his friends were amazing, and and I was so thrilled to be part of that and to see a crowded room for this person that so many people clearly loved, and then a ghoul swooped in.
Yeah, and so I think one of the morals of that story is that a little bit of pushback.
Right. They're not used to it. And like you said, a tiny nudge, just one email that's not even a rager, just saying, hey, man, that was my grandpa's funeral. His favorite song was X. You wouldn't let his granddaughters play that song because it's not a Mormon song.
Right. Yeah, I know.
That's fucked up. And I don't appreciate that.
You have a bad experience in a restaurant, you write a review online. You have an issue that matters to you, you call your senator. Why does religion get a dispensation from that? That's all.
They don't pay taxes for the crate on the corner in the public sphere where the rest of us pay taxes to stand and speak our minds, but they demand that they get to stand on that crate and speak their minds. I think it's okay.
Yeah, they're putting ideas out into the public square.
Yeah.
They are contributing to the national dialogue. They're not immune.
They're combatants
from the consequences of that, or from the what happens.
They're willing
when you do that.
They're willing combatants in the culture war. They don't get to then say
too willing.
This is my secret fort. No girls allowed.
Right.
Yeah. You can't come in here.
But we'll launch some missives out.
But I can throw crab apples at you from in here.
Right.
So anyway, that's my take on it. I'm obviously have a little bit more of a militant sensibility about it.
Just to
Uncle Dan.
I think just don't be an asshole, but be an adjutant. I think that's completely fine.
Speak your mind. Speak your mind and speak your truth. And make sure that if nothing else, you plant that tiny kernel of hesitation. Gosh, maybe I shouldn't be a dick over somebody's coffin.
And remember that we on this side of the aisle don't use bombs for any of this.
Yep.
We don't, and I mean that, don't be, this isn't
Don't burn shit, don't vandalize shit, don't,
use the peaceful tools that we all have available to us.
Because here's what will happen is especially in this country, Christians, the most powerful, taken in mass, the most powerful group in this country, already have a persecution complex.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you do something that is actually could be mistaken in some way as persecuting them, destroying property, painting a swastika on something,
putting your finger in their chest is on the scale,
touching them,
the same as 1,000 burned abortion clinics.
Right. So
saying something mean is enough for them to
that's
feel
enough.
Persecuted, but
that's enough. But
you can say something mean.
At least that's communication.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's my take on it.
All right. Well, there you go. I think that's volley one.
Yeah.
In a conversation that may end up happening more later. Who knows?
Pipe in and let us know. Send us an email or something and let us know if your opinion on it, or if you've done this in an artful or a inartful way.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah.
All right, let's call it good there and move on.
Settled.
Yeah.
Moving on.